Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. My name is Sarah, and today my co host Carrie Bennett and I are so excited that you're here because we're going to talk about these complex topics in circadian biology and quantum biology and make them accessible to the everyday person. So you're in for a real treat, and we're so excited to have you here. I want to take a moment to ask you, if you're listening over on Apple or Spotify, to leave the show a review to help get it out to more people. And if you're over on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and leave us a comment or a like underneath this video to, again, help get this show out to more and more people. Please check out also the show notes if you're on audio only or if you're on video. We have them under both all of my free resources and all of Carrie's free resources. We have co-taught a course called Quantum Fertility together and actually just wrapped up the Health Transformation Summit. We will be doing another one in a few months. So we have a lot of projects we're working on together, and we have a lot of free resources for you in the show notes that we would love you to check out if some of these topics in the show are interesting to you and you want to join either one of our communities or dive deeper, get some free resources, or even take a course. Make sure to check those out. Thank you again for listening or watching, whichever one you're doing. And let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. Today, we're talking about gut health.
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of people realize that how much circadian rhythm impacts things like our gut's ability to heal, how having appropriate cortisol releases can change intestinal permeability, how blocking the artificial light at night can actually allow your tissues in your gut to regenerate. I mean, there's so much here that we can unpack when it comes to gut health. And this is coming from, I know you had massive gut symptoms. I had massive gut symptoms. And while nutrition moved the needle a little bit and supplements move the needle a little bit, like there's nothing touches circadian and quantum health strategies when it comes to really, truly resolving gut inflammation.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I did the carnivore diet, was really because the gut issues. We've talked about that several times on the show. Is like my gut was such a disaster that I'm like, if I just got to eat all meat for the rest of my life just to not feel this way anymore, I'm ready to do that. And it did help. But again, after a period of time, it was not moving the needle the way that I wanted it to. And then I added the digestive enzymes and HCl, which was helpful, very helpful. But then I found circadian biology and it was like, oh, this is amazing, right? Like I can eat stuff that I previously would be sick for 3 days over after having implemented this stuff for a period of time. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, well, what's the mechanism to this? Because I've been working on my gut for my whole entire life, and this has worked better than anything else I've done.
Yeah, totally. Same. I was severely debilitated by gluten and anything that a lot of cross reactivities because of that. And eliminating gluten solved some stuff, right? I wasn't adding an inflammatory insult to my gut anymore. And the 4R, 5R gut protocol helped some, but I don't think it was fully resolved at the inflammation, and it didn't optimize my gut function. Like you said, betaine HCl, I needed 9 capsules a meal, right? It was beneficial at first to kind of get my body actually digesting and absorbing nutrients, but it wasn't healing. It didn't teach my body how to regenerate its own gut lining every 2 to 5 days, right? So like and like you and me, I think I've said this, I think on this podcast, I can eat gluten. I choose not to, but I can eat it. And it's not like you said, the 3-day hangover and the initial like stomach pain and bloating and cramping. And then like the feeling of just being out there for the next 3 days. So
yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty nice to not have to be constantly on alert about everything and going to a birthday party or holiday party and watching everybody else have food. And then you're sitting there like drinking your water, not eating anything. And like, yeah, I think that it's pretty nice and empowering. And I don't know about you, but this whole lifestyle has also loosened up the way that I think about food and the way I think about things being like good or bad. And I think that's had a really good impact on my gut health as well, because I think there's definitely a nervous system component. But if I from rightfully so, from years of food intolerances and years of just like, I have a couple of cashews because I used to love cashews. And now I'm like, I don't really care about cashews. I take them or leave them. But I'd have a couple of cashews or something, and I would have like this sulfur gas that just like would keep me awake
Mhm.
the entire night. So I would literally have food phobias and never really enjoy like social events. And now I'm like, I wonder how much of my the phobia part was like playing into this whole loop of how messed up my gut was too. So I think that can come into play for people as well.
Yeah, I'm certain that plays a role for sure. When we think that the gut interfaces with food and we assume that food is the solution, or that we have to be
Yes.
very diligent about what we put in, and it's kind of it's myopic. And I was that way as well, right? It's like, oh, I can't ever touch gluten. Oh, I can't ever eat this. And gosh, like you said, being able to eat gluten if I wanted to, or being able to eat some of the things that used to be inflammatory in my gut, sugar, right? Like things like that. Like it's not a problem. It's not a problem anymore. And so I view food as nourishment, and my
Mhm.
body wants to eat nourishing foods. I don't have crazy sugar cravings. I don't have crazy like, yeah, just like this need for like fast food, processed food. Like my body doesn't, that doesn't sound interesting to me, or
Mhm.
my body doesn't want that. So it's been really freeing, and that's come from the circadian stuff. But like you said, the mental component that there is, if I did choose to have dessert out to eat with my family, it wouldn't be impactful. It
Right.
wouldn't cause issues in the gut in the same way that it would have before. So it opens up this freeing mindset that supports both, I think, gut health and nervous system health as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all intertwined. But like you were mentioning, the ability of the gut lining to repair, I think that that is playing a part in so many people's poor gut health because they're exposed to artificial light at night. They have poor circadian rhythms. There's a gut clock, right? I was reading this. I know I'm kind of jumping all over. Maybe bring me back
All
in
good. All
when I
good.
finish this thought. I read this article last summer that essentially said if you eat too close to bedtime, it actually impacts your skin's ability to repair from sunburn. I'm like, what? Like
Well,
that was a
yeah.
scientific study that was done, and it makes perfect sense.
Well, think about this, because we talk light a ton, which is really important
Mhm.
in terms of
Mhm.
being a primary cue for what time of day it is, or absence of light in terms of darkness. And we also have secondary timekeepers in the body that that hopefully reinforce the light that we're receiving. And if all of a
Yes.
sudden my brain might be thinking the day is ending because maybe I'm in dimmer light, and then I give it a huge meal, the assumption is that, oh no, the gut's still active, here we go, we got to keep those processes revved up. So
Mhm.
you're not going to be turning on tissue repair and rejuvenation when the body thinks that there's still activity and daytime basically to be had.
Yeah, exactly. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And so go ahead.
Yeah, no, so we're so I mean, to start with this, sometimes it feels like broken records in terms of
Mhm.
what are the strategies that we do, but that's the reason why we consider this to be foundational, very fundamental, is that these things support tissue regeneration all
Yeah,
over the body.
over the
So
body.
maybe your tissue regeneration is arthritic, maybe your tissue regeneration is autoimmune, maybe your tissue regeneration need is leaky gut. You have to signal that it's nighttime. And then your
Mhm.
tissue regeneration genes will essentially get active, and they'll allow your cells to go through things like cell division. If there's leaks in the gut, you got to get new cells in the lining. You have to go through autophagy and apoptosis to clear out damage and to clear out, like completely eliminate cells that are no longer functional for the tissue. And that
Mhm.
happens in the absence of light at night. We have to have that true darkness in order to both signal through the gene transcription pathways, but also then through the production of pineal melatonin to allow this to happen. I was under the impression,
Mhm.
even in grad school, right? Grad school in nutrition, I was under the impression that it took at least 3 weeks to rejuvenate a gut lining,
Yeah.
which is why so many
Yes.
of these elimination diets are like 3 weeks long, right? And I
Yeah.
realize now that might be the case in someone who has no a concept of circadian signaling.
Yep.
Right. Because
Mhm.
two, 3, 5 days at the most is what it's going to take someone. So you can imagine why leaky gut can keep going. The symptoms of leaky gut can keep going, even in spite of eating clean and adding in
Yes.
things like glutamine, digestive enzymes, probiotics, right? All those things that we get in these protocols. If the brain doesn't signal, if the body doesn't signal darkness and repair time, those
Yep.
insults are you're not clearing up the inflammation. So next day you start the day, it's still there. And now you're just, your body is going to continue to create the inflammation naturally, just as a result of digesting food. We naturally have some inflammation, gut lining support that needs to happen. Not to mention then you have things like laptops and tablets and things that we put right on our gut, right? Like non-native EMFs that we put right on our gut. That can be a big time stressor for the gut lining. For the microbiome there, right? And so it's like modern living gives us a lot of reasons, independent of food, why we have poor gut health.
Oh yeah,
But what we
absolutely.
can do about it too, basically.
Yeah. I get the SIBO question quite a bit. I'd love to hear your opinion on how SIBO comes into this whole picture.
Yeah, I feel like SIBO is primarily a result of poor gut motility. If food, and obviously there's the digestion effect to it. So number one, food needs to be broken down into its individual nutrients. So if we start at the front of the digestive tract, even before food enters the mouth, we have a phase of digestion called cephalic phase digestion, which is digestion that begins in the brain, meaning by looking at our food, mental anticipation of food, and smelling our food, we start to prime the digestive pathway, which would be increase in saliva, increase in stomach acid, and increase in digestive enzyme capacity. And so then food enters our mouth. We're meant to taste our food, which gives our tongue a lot of receptor cues about what food, what types of nutrients we might be consuming. So do we need more stomach acid? Do we need more lipase, right? Do we need to, depending on the type of food that we're consuming. And so we have to taste our food, and then we have to chew our food. Because mastication chewing our food is designed to, basically we're designed to mush our food into baby food consistency before we swallow it. And then if we do that, the stomach and the digestive enzymes that happen in the initial part of the pancreas break the food down into individual nutrients. Those individual nutrients have really good absorption capabilities, meaning you have glucose to get absorbed into the bloodstream, you have amino acids that get absorbed into the bloodstream, and you have little tiny fat droplets that get absorbed into the bloodstream, along with the other nutrients, the vitamins and minerals that are found in the food. It is virtually impossible to have SIBO if you actually are pulling the nutrients in. In order for the bacteria to have fuel to overgrow, you have to be giving them things that are not digested fully, large chunks of protein, both plant and animal-based protein. And that generally indicates stomach acid was impaired. We're not chewing our food. Right. And so that's step one. If we can break our food down into individual nutrients, SIBO symptoms go away drastically because those bacteria don't have a fuel. Number two, the bacteria we're designed to move our body, our digestive, or our food in or through our body in waves of about 24 hours. If the food gets to sit there for too long, that's when the bacterial population will overgrow, and it will go from the colon into the small intestine. So it's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that right there means that you need to do something to support gut motility. And a primary indication of that is circadian rhythm. Right?
Yes.
The brain needs to know that the day has started. When we get a morning sunlight rise, we get an HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, that kickstarts cortisol, that starts to signal the start of the day for the gut. So things start to move a little bit. Then UVA rise produces serotonin. Some of that serotonin's in our gut. That gut serotonin in the gut is a bowel. It moves the bowels. It moves food through the digestive tract. People, I hate to say, but people who have, go ahead.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. poop, right? Exactly. And the extreme indication of that is there are people who have serotonin producing tumors in their gut. Obviously not a great situation, but they have literally uncontrollable diarrhea. And it's because that serotonin is so excessive that they're just flushing and moving stuff through their gut so fast. And so you have to ask yourself, if I'm not moving it fast enough, I'm probably not getting appropriate morning serotonin production. The other thing to look at there is bile. Bile production is impaired in a lot of people because bile is also, it's not just to digest fat, it's also a motility stimulant to move food through the gut. So I never have seen a really beneficial impact when attacking SIBO through a killing protocol. And
Yeah.
because if you're not digesting your food and if you're
Right.
not appropriately stimulating gut motility,
Right.
it's just going to regrow and it's just going
Mm-hmm.
to come back. So that's why
Right.
these
Because
are
it's not, yeah.
yeah, it's not a comprehensive thing. These are things. So these are ways that the reasons why I look to so many other things first when it comes to supporting gut health and bowel motility and enzyme production before I turn to things like heavy
Yeah.
supplementation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough because I've been there before. And when you're inflamed and you've got like uncomfortable gas and bloating, like all you want is relief. You're like, I don't care, kill it, make it all go away. Right.
Sure.
But kind of backing out of that and maybe supporting some of these other things, I think is crucial. And I mean, I did do, when I was doing carnivore, I think something that was helpful that I did was a lot of fasting. So
Yes.
I think fasting can be helpful, but again, there's always a downside. There's a downside to everything, fasting that great. You could help your gut heal, but, or give it a break. It's not necessarily going to heal it if you're staying up all night on your phone, looking at artificial light, never outside, UVA, getting that serotonin production. You're still not going to heal, even if you fast for a week, which is what I did, a 7-day water fast. I think can give you a good break, but then you've got the downside of what that does to your hormones, right? And
Right.
thyroid downregulation. And there's always a downside to these things. I don't think there's any downside at all to working on your circadian rhythms, getting morning sunlight, all of these things that we're talking about. I don't think there's really a downside to that. I think there's an upside.
I agree wholeheartedly, and absolutely in terms of fasting. Fasting does it's called the complex that moves food through. It's called the migrating motor complex. Fasting
Yeah.
does reset that, right? But like you said, are you getting the benefits of fasting? And that's not going to happen if you're being exposed to artificial light at night.
Right.
And so,
Right.
if someone is looking to start utilizing fasting, you have to do what I would call an early circadian fueling window. So
Yes.
breakfast to
Yep.
6 or 8 hours later, then taking that
Mm-hmm.
16 to 18-hour time away from food to get some of that
Mm-hmm.
reset. If it doesn't even have to be every day, but if that starts to feel
Right.
comfortable, then you could try a 24-hour breakfast to
The
breakfast,
breakfast. Yeah.
right,
I like those every
style
now and
fast.
then.
I like
Yeah.
those too. And then, at some point, is there the potential for a longer fast that can have healing benefits? Absolutely, there can be, but I
Yeah.
think it has to be a layering on approach, and I think your
Yeah. You don't
circadian
want to just
signaling has to be strong too.
strong, very strong. So this is an odd question out of kind of left field, but I actually have it'll be out by the time this podcast comes out. I did an interview with Dr. Tina about Ozempic and Wegovy and all these drugs. And we'll see. We'll see how my community responds. It could be big backlash, but it's going to be interesting. One of the things that she was mentioning, though, about these drugs, and even if you're using them as a peptide, which is what they are, as peptides, even if you're microdosing them as a peptide, which is what I think if anyone wants to use those drugs, they should do that with a practitioner, Holston, for a short period of time, right?
Sure.
But thinking about gut health, one of the things that these peptides do, from my understanding and the conversation I had with her, was that it's a thing called delayed gastric emptying. And that's how, the mechanism works of making you not feel hungry. So I'm sitting here thinking, as she's telling me this, I'm like, how does this impact the gut health? Because so much of our gut health is that motility, right?
It is. Gastroparesis is another way
Yeah.
of saying delayed stomach emptying that can happen without being drug induced, right? Sometimes it's stress
Right.
induced or there's other things.
Yes.
And that is a huge precursor, in my opinion, to gut health issues and especially
Yeah.
SIBO. So again, and it's tough. I get it. I just think that I think there's better ways to promote long-term weight, long-term healthy weight normalization for your body without turning to that. There's just too many unknowns. I'm going to guarantee you, I haven't looked up, I'm going to guarantee you that depletes B12, right? So, I mean, we need be adequate. It's like this double-edged sword. We need stomach acid to activate B12. We need B12 to activate intrinsic. I mean, it's going to have a lot of, I think, there's going to come out to be a lot of bowel health issues.
Yeah.
In the long run, I'm anticipating.
Yeah. I'm curious for you to listen to that episode and get your feedback on it. I'm just going into it with an open mind. Like I said, see, this episode will be out by the time that one airs, because it's airing tomorrow. So I'm curious to see how people respond. But that was just a thing that kept coming up for me when I was having that conversation with her. Is just like, well, I mean, some of this sounds very interesting. She's uncovered a ton of really interesting research about this, but so many people have gut issues, and when I was my most overweight, my gut was probably the most a mess, to be honest with you. So that's where I'm like, I don't know. I'm hesitant with the whole thing.
Yeah, I am too. And that being said too, that if I can remember correctly, that works on the GLP-1 pathway,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope people aren't trying things like berberine first,
Oh, no.
right? Right.
Yeah,
Because these also work on the GLP-1 pathway. And I mean, I would rather try berberine, curcumin, and resveratrol, before maybe jumping into something like
I'm still going to tell people lifestyle is going to have to be done, even if you do decide to do. And that's what I kind of had said in the episode. I was like, even if someone does say, I want to explore this pathway, it's not going to work for you long term if you don't have a good lifestyle. And for me, a good lifestyle is something like my 21-day program, where it's like, I'm going to teach you through, in all of your programs, where it's like, I'm going to teach you the basics of light. And that has to be a foundation, right?
Totally.
And we can talk about,
Have you seen if Ozempic regulates or changes leptin levels at all?
I believe it can lower them.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so, right. That's obviously that's a beneficial thing, but again, we've seen leptin lower with circadian and nutrition changes.
Right. I mean, that's why my whole 21-day program is a lifestyle program. And I would much rather I think it's a lot less risky. So I don't know. I'm still like thinking about it. Not for myself, obviously, because I've optimized really well using all of these things, but the gut health aspect has really got me twisted a little bit, because I'm like, that's when my gut was the most a mess, is when I was really struggling with my weight. And I know a lot of my friends, family members that are really overweight, they have a lot of gut issues. Like, can we just work on your circadian health? That I promise this would be.
I know.
I mean, because wouldn't like POMC and all those, all that happens in the morning light, that's to help regulate your appetite, right?
Yeah, and it's all quantized, right? Like, and is it doing, I don't know. I have a lot of questions about what does it do for things like receptor sensitivity. It may lower leptin, but is it actually improving leptin signaling? Is it...
It can't improve the signaling. I don't think, maybe, but I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Again, the things I haven't looked into a ton. I can prescribe nothing, right? And so I haven't necessarily looked into that.
Can't prescribe it. Don't know anyone who can.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And maybe if someone is using this as a short-term strategy to get some motivation to make lifestyle choices, right? I mean, it's never cut and dry. There's always room for a conversation, and so that'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. And it's just, honestly, there's so many people out there that are like shaming people for choosing to take medications of all kind. And I think that can be really toxic behavior and toxic like culture, because there is now and then a cause for someone to take medication. Sometimes your kid is very sick and it could be life-threatening if they don't get an antibiotic. And it's like, if you're a crunchy mom, though, you're like, if antibiotics like the worst thing you could ever give to your child. And I feel the same way with some of these weight loss drugs, and not necessarily as their label, as they're being overdosed and overprescribed and not given any other instructions with. I'm saying like a microdosed peptide, maybe if somebody doesn't have poor gut health, it could be something that, could give them a push to do for a little bit to get into a better place. But again, it's all on a case by case basis, and it's not up to me to
Yeah.
shame or condone or any of that. So yeah,
Same. Absolutely same, So again, I just hope people, if they're using anything like that, they're using it in conjunction with really key lifestyle supports. So maybe I won't need
100%.
it
It's
at some
got to be
point.
lifestyle. I'm like, don't bother if you're, because I've had people come to me before and they're on these drugs and they're like, can I still do your program? And I'm like, I'm going to highly recommend you do my program if you're going to be on these drugs, because you don't want to be on them forever. And you need to have something to, I think, help you to really get
Regulate.
your lifestyle.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I know that was like a little
It's a,
tangent there.
that'll be interesting. I'll listen to that one for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll be curious. But in terms of like, yeah, that's a place where people can look that I don't think they oftentimes look to, is how these types of medications are impacting things like bowel motility.
Yes.
If that's an underrated way to support gut health, is like, are you
Yeah.
moving your bowels on a regular basis? I
Mhm.
mean, you know, the cool thing about the gut is it does have the ability to express symptoms in ways to
Mhm.
know if what I'm doing is supportive or what I'm doing might be not great. So I hope
Mhm.
people are checking their poop on a regular basis. It's like,
Mhm.
what is your poop? How big is it? How
At the
intact is
Bristol.
it? Right. The Bristol
Mhm.
stool chart. What color is it? Does it sink? Does it
Mhm.
float? Are there still fiber or food that you could recognize in your stool? I mean, all of these things are indicative of um, am I actually digesting my food and eliminating the waste effectively? You can look at things like the color to understand if you're maybe making enough
Mhm.
bile or not enough
Yes.
bile, because bile is supposed to
Yep.
give poop a nice dark brown color. So if you're always
Mhm.
tending towards the light color, well, guess what? Then you also might then need to work on producing bile, but also you're not necessarily digesting your fat well, maybe not absorbing fat
Right.
soluble nutrients as well. Maybe you're um, having potential issues with moving your bowels effectively. And so all of these things, our body can give us signs through the gut a ton. If you've got
Mhm.
high bloat, anytime you got that high bloat, stomach acid, right? You always got to think about stomach
Mhm.
acid tending towards too
Mhm.
low, including heartburn. That's a typically too low stomach acid. That lower esophageal sphincter doesn't close all the way because the stomach acid isn't adequate. And again, I would rather know this and say, oh, my stomach is asking for major help. That means I want to
Mhm.
set a strong circadian rhythm. I want to work on cephalic phase digestion. I want to
Mhm.
eat in a parasympathetic state and sit maybe outside whenever I can, chew my food like it's nobody's business. Maybe I would
Yes.
benefit from a little apple cider vinegar with my meal to help add some acidity to the stomach, some digestive bitters, even, right? Something along those lines. And then do that for a little while and then assess as well, right? So
Yep.
the circadian signaling, the light signaling is foundational. And then there are some additional ways that we can look to support the body without
Yeah.
going through like a protocol too, right? Or you know what, this might get some pushback, but food
Sorry, I
sensitivity
already talked about
testing,
weight loss drugs.
right? Food sensitivity tests, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For
Oh.
me, they're typically an indication that you just have, if you got a lot of food sensitivities, you just got a massively leaky gut. And it doesn't
Yep.
mean you need to
Yep.
avoid peaches and
True.
apricots and duck
Right.
for the rest of your life, right? It's like, no, I
Right.
typically ask people what they ate within the couple days leading up to doing that test. And it's like,
A
well, those
lot
are
of
the foods
times
that I
that's what's
eat.
going to show up on the test, right?
Yeah, it just means that you've got leaky gut in general, and it means you desperately need to block the artificial light at night. And then
Mhm.
another aspect of this circadian practices that I think are highly, highly beneficial for gut health is either, well, probably both red light therapy and also sunlight exposure directly on the abdomen.
Mhm.
Goes a
Yep. Oh yeah.
long way
Huge.
towards creating, I mean, anti-inflammatory for sure on the gut. And also, the light through the eyes and the light on the skin communicates information to the gut microbiome. So, if you're dealing
Yep.
with symptoms of dysbiosis and you're trying to rebalance it using either herbal tinctures or
Probiotic. Yeah.
probiotics and things, the gut microbiome is way too responsive to light, and so you just have to. It's trying to tell the time of day, and it's going to change. It's going to look different in the morning than it is at noon,
Mhm.
than it is at night. And so,
Mhm.
if you
Yep.
signal light appropriately, the microbiome will naturally shift and change both throughout a
Mhm.
24-hour period, but also seasonally as well.
Yep. Yep, 100%. That's what people don't realize. Your gut, your hormones, all of these things shift on a seasonal basis. But the reason why I think a lot of people have so much dysfunction is that their body never really knows if it's actually summer or winter, by the information it's receiving. Like, yeah, I might go outside for like 2 seconds on a really, really cold day, but that's not really most of the time. You're got overhead lights on, got heat on, you're staying up till 11 o'clock at night on your phone. Your body's not really experiencing any seasonality at all. And the gut microbiome, again, yeah, it's informed by light. So, yeah, something to pay attention to for sure.
It absolutely is something to pay attention to. And the one thing I want to tell people with this one is you got to give this to support the severe symptoms that Sarah and I had. You got to give this a year, if not 18 months, right? You got to give it a long enough time for the body to sync up and do what it needs to do. This isn't necessarily going to be overnight success, but in the long run, I am certain that these circadian practices allow me more food freedom than ever before to be able to not necessarily like worry about every little bit that I'm putting into my mouth. And I don't I thought it was normal at the end of the day to just, I look 2 months pregnant, 3 months pregnant. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, that's
and you
not
see
normal.
that all over social media too. It's like all over, like girls will take a picture. I'm like, no, that's not normal at all. It's really not normal.
It's not. And it's like so cool to be like, the stomach that I woke up with is the stomach that I have at the end of the day. Right. Or my family, as you said, my family used to be like, your gas is the worst gas on the planet. Right. It's nice to not be able to I'll fart now and no one will know because it doesn't have this rotten egg smell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are the social media posts that drive me crazy. There's even influencers where their whole entire page is about finding bloat friendly clothing. That's a legit but you don't have to do that. It's not okay, cool. You're making
You're probably doing really great helping people with bloat friendly clothing. It's good. Fine.
Because a lot of people need it because they're not willing to do this stuff, or maybe they don't even know that it's out there. So hopefully this episode can reach the right people.
Reach enough people. Yeah. I mean, just a couple of things. And I'm not gonna knock gut healing protocols either, right? No, I do think there can be, like we said, a therapeutic need for certain supports, supplements, things like that for a period of time. Yeah. But it, at least for me and the number of clients I've seen who have gone through it, it didn't have the true healing effect.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. I bought so many different protocols and tried so many different things. Some of them made it way, way worse. And that's why I was like, I'm done buying crap. I'm just doing the carnivore diet because I literally cannot buy any more crap that doesn't work and then makes things worse. I'm just done with it. Parasite detoxes. I did all kinds of detoxes, cleanses, none of it worked. And so carnivore diet finally got things to calm down, but that wasn't the end of the road. And fasting, it got things to calm down where I really actually got some amazing relief. But life is not, you're not healed if you are only restricted to one or two foods. And that's a tough conversation because there are people that I love dearly that are carnivore people and their carnivore lifestyle. I'm choosing this for my life. I'm like, that's cool. But the majority of the people that I know don't want to just only eat one or two foods for the rest of their life. And I don't think that you should have to. I think you should be able to enjoy something here and there at a birthday party or holiday and not feel sick for 2 weeks. And I think it is possible, but it does take some time. Like you mentioned, it takes a good year of being very consistent. And, you and I are both a few years in here. And I think it does continue to get better the more that you do this stuff and take care of yourself. And so I think there's a lot of hope for people in that conversation, and it doesn't involve spending a ton of money and trying a bunch of different stuff. It's just the simple stuff that we talk about all the time.
Yeah, totally. And if people choose to do carnivore and they love it the rest of their lives, that by
Yeah.
all means go for it. But like you said,
Yeah. I
yeah,
just didn't want to. I'm like,
yeah.
I wanted an apple. Like,
Mhm.
that's not like, I was starting to crave, like it was summertime and I wanted more
Salad and yeah, green.
watermelon,
Mhm.
I really wanted the fruits. We get tons of watermelon here in Georgia. And I was just like, why can't I just have a watermelon? you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So it is. It makes things a little, I think, way more freeing. Like you said, less restrictive for sure.
definitely,
I mean,
yeah,
we're designed to turn over our gut every 2 days. And so we're designed to
exactly.
have an occasional insult to the gut lining and
Right.
not be impacted by
Right.
it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the body too. There's I think sometimes I'm like eating one of those foods. It's kind of like a hormetic stress, it's like your
Totally.
body deals with it and you're like, cause I'll sometimes, we were talking before we turned on the camera. I'm like, I'll sometimes have something and I'm like, just have a little, of this. And I'll think, I probably will have gained weight from that. And the next day I'll wake up, scale is down. I'm like, huh? Like, what is that? Because my body saw it and was like, oh, we got to take care of this. Cool. Let's ramp it up. And so that's that resilience that I think the body is capable of building, even in your mid 40s, when you have this lifestyle really dialed in. I think it is very possible.
Totally. Yeah, I think the same way. The same reason why people do sauna and the same reason why cold plunges are
Hmm.
effective, right? We have to be able
Hmm.
to have resiliency in our gut as
Resilience.
well to be able
Yep.
to, you know, not live a restricted lifestyle, in my
Right.
opinion.
And don't get it twisted. I'm not telling anyone to go eat McDonald's or,
Mm-mm.
you know,
Mm-mm.
go
No.
crazy with the seed oils or anything like that. But I'm saying, one meal shouldn't make you feel like you want to die for a couple of days or even a week.
Yeah.
That's a signal that, maybe there's some things we can work on and support.
I mean, I've even seen anaphylactic allergies. And again,
Mm.
don't go eating what you're anaphylactic to right now, but I have
Oh,
seen
no.
anaphylactic allergies go away when
Mm,
doing this stuff, right?
it's
So things
amazing.
that people were literally needed to jab themselves with an EpiPen with within
EpiPen.
minutes, they were exposed to those types of things and they did not have any reaction, let alone an anaphylactic reaction.
It's amazing. That's really amazing.
Hmm. I know.
Awesome.
The body's
Well, I feel like
amazing if we let it heal, right?
yeah,
It's amazing if we let it heal.
exactly. We just have to quit overthinking, overdoing, and
Mhm.
overcomplicating it. And that's really challenging in today's society, especially on Instagram, on the internet, because there's a new detox protocol or
Mhm.
special diet or plan everywhere you look. And it's like, yeah, but we weren't designed that way.
Right,
That's just
right.
not how we were designed. So,
Well, in the same way that you wrote out the carnivore diet until you started to make note that some additional support was needed, something was missing, a lot of people don't even stick with one thing long enough to get to that
no,
point.
they don't.
And
They
so
don't.
it's like we just got to be aware of how our body is responding. And I say if it's moving generally in the direction you want to go, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Ride it out. Do what you
Mm,
think is supportive. And then at some point, if you're getting true signals that something else is needed, okay, dive in a little bit deeper. But we like to
yeah,
bebop and bounce around. And it's a very much we're information consumers these days. And oftentimes
100%.
don't let our bodies really respond to what we might be doing.
Yeah, got to be consistent and give it some time. That's hard.
Mhm.
That's really hard. And you and I both have our communities and we talk to people every day. And I think that's the number one thing that stops people from healing is that they do something for 2 to 3 weeks and then they're like, didn't work. I'm done. Moving on to the next protocol. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, have fun with that because you got to give some stuff time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say you have to give your body a full year each season. You have to be
Hmm.
able to tweak and support your body with the circadian and quantum help to truly get an indication of how your body is feeling with this. So,
I agree. I agree. Awesome. Well, do you think there's anything else about gut health that we didn't cover that you think we should?
I mean, that's the general gist of it. What questions do you think we would get from this?
I don't
How
know.
often
I'll
should
check the
I
comments.
sun my skin? If you're listen,
red light therapy on the gut.
10 to 20 minutes most days of the week getting red light therapy and or a full body sunlight exposure on your skin. Just before this, you're like, I loved it because you're like, and I have my meetings running over. I ran outside, took this off, and I got a tank top on. I was like, woo!
Right, that was me yesterday, laying in the grass, just belly exposed. Like, oh,
I know,
it's amazing.
So
yep,
so good. So yeah, just be consistent. It doesn't have to be perfect. That was 7 minutes for me, and I loved it. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. It's wonderful. Yeah, and I'll look at the comments. I've been kind of going in the comments more, and everyone's been pretty nice.
Thanks,
so thank
everyone.
you guys.
Appreciate
it. So I'll see what kind of questions we have from this episode, and we'll see if there's other conversations we can have that come out of it.
Sure. Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Carrie, for another awesome Quantum Conversations episode.
Thanks, Sarah.